Today we are talking about Cerberus. Originally this was intended to be a rant on how trash Cerberus really is. The more I researched into Cerberus, the more I found that putting him into the category of pure trash doesn't quite do him justice anymore after all his buffs. So the initial intent was to mock the buff as something that really didn't have any impact at all, and that's not quite true. But at the same time, putting him in a higher tier also is a bit questionable. So today we're going to discuss where the character may stand, what ups and downs he has, and how he generally performs and how his kit works. Cerberus' big buff happened in patch 5.3. Cerberus has struggled since his release to really make an impact for his team. We are increasing his ability to deal damage, engage, and giving him the ability to attack his enemies that are caught in Stygian Torment immediately. Additionally, Stygian Torment will activate all of his heads, allowing him to combo more directly with Paralyzing Spit. First one, Ghastly Breath, increase damage per tick from 15 to 55 to 20 to 60. Second, Soul Expulsion, increases range from 40 to 50. And the third one, Stygian Torment, the ultimate, decrease post-fire from 1.4 to 0.1. Cerberus is now crippled for 1.2 seconds after firing the ability. He's also knockback and knockup immune for 1.2 seconds. This ability now auto-activates all three heads. The damage increase on Ghastly Breath is quite impactful. On rank 1, the damage goes up from 105 to 140. The Soul Expulsion buff just makes the ability a little more reliable. And the big deal here is Stygian Torment, especially the fact that the ultimate now also activates Cerberus' head for his 1. And now that we have the current state of his abilities, let's look at the abilities in detail a little more. His passive is Spirit of Death. Anytime an enemy god within 40 units of Cerberus is healed, that healing is reduced by 20% and Cerberus receives 40% of the heal. A nice but conditional passive. Healing reduction is always good, nothing bad about that. But if you are not laning against somebody who has frequent self-heals, then the impact of this is drastically lowered, whereas against a target that heals a lot, it can do a lot. That means that many lanes that include a healer and Cerberus will kind of stagnate, because there is so much self-heal going on between the healer's self-heal, Cerberus passive, and Cerberus healing ability with the 3, that there is rarely any kill potential just through the fact how his passive works. But then again, like I said, absolutely conditional, which makes it a little bit awkward in situations where there aren't that many heals around, and kind of makes Cerberus as a whole a bit of a situational pick. And as we're already talking about situational things, let's talk about his second ability, Ghastly Breath, next. Ghastly Breath is strange in a way that it is a high damaging ability that can be a high threat between the protection shred that it has, the slow that it has, and the damage that comes out. But its viability heavily depends on what target he's up against. An enemy with a strong CC will simply use that CC to prevent Cerberus from using his 2, leaving him with his 1 for clear and for aggression afterwards for the most part, because his 3 really isn't that impactful in that context. A god with a good escape will often be able to simply get out of the range of the ability before it can unleash nearly its whole potential. Just a short dash is enough to get away from Cerberus, and as the ability is channeled, he has no way of catching up. So based on his 2, a major rule with Cerberus should be just don't get too close. Then at the same time, there is also the 1, Paralyzing Spit. Paralyzing Spit does damage per head. The damage here is a bit wonky because it highly depends on how many of the hits actually hit a target. So it can be anywhere between 50 and 200 damage on rank 1, and it scales up quite high, but again, it depends on how many of the projectiles you actually hit. Same goes for the scaling, it can scale up to 100%, but you have to make that happen first. And the awkward thing in this context is that the 1 kind of depends on the 2. Theoretically, you can activate the 1 through your basic attacks as well. If you hit 3 targets with a basic attack, all the heads will be activated as well. But typically what you'll find is that the easiest way to activate it is through your 2 or your ultimate. That means if a target is further away from you and you would want to use your 1, then you still have to get the passive up somehow, the heads up somehow more specifically, by using the 2 or the ultimate. And that means that at long range you're not automatically a threat unless you burn one of your abilities. So really with Cerberus you want to be in your target's face and then have them running away for the ideal combo of your abilities and to actually get your damage off. On top of that, the one is kind of up to extremely unreliable. Schnitzel actually did some calculations on that, and the area in which you can stun a target with Cerberus 1 is smaller than Hercules' pull or Ram's third shot of his ultimate, which are considered some of the harder abilities to hit in the game. So the overall area, while in a different shape, is so small that it's smaller than both of these. And that means that it's kinda hard to hit. And having this ability not only be hard to hit, but also unreliable at the same time as you depend on other abilities to activate it first, it becomes one of the strangest abilities in the game. It's definitely a high skill cap, no doubt about that, but if you look at people using this ability, no matter which level of play, you will see them miss a lot of these stunts on the one. Sure, a higher level player will hit a little more than a lower level player, but a higher level player also plays against more skilled opponents that are able to juke better, so there's not really any level of play where you can expect to reliably hit the stun of your one. When you do, it is massively impactful because it does so much damage between the base damage, the scaling, and the 2.2 second stun at max rank, but it just doesn't happen that often, and the cooldown is also not short with 16 seconds either. Yet at the same time, the possibility of being able to hit a stun makes you a constant lingering threat, kind of a loose cannon that hasn't really been fired yet. With how unresponsive his kit feels, especially in terms of his one, sometimes it feels like it's more reliant on RNG than anything else if you will hit. His third ability is interesting in another way. Soul Expulsion allows you to leap forward, deal damage, and then have ghosts spawned from all the targets you hit, which will heal you based on which kind of target you hit and killing that ghost. These ghosts take multiple hits to be killed, but are kind of hit in an AoE way, so to speak. But the awkward thing here is that you have a leap, which is your escape tool, which you want to use to escape enemies, tied with your self-healing ability. Now, when do you want to heal usually? When you're low on health. And when do you want to use your escape the most and make sure to have your escape available? Also, when you're in low health. So this kind of encourages a playstyle where you let the enemy minions come all the way to your tower so you can use your leap without putting yourself at risk and then heal up at your tower, which is just super boring to play and to play against. Well, but I guess at least it heals you somehow. And then we have the ultimate. The ultimate in itself is so awkward. First, you have an awkward delay before the ultimate actually goes off. It isn't too long, but it means that enemies can use escapes. When they do that, then you can easily burn your ult, waste your ult before doing anything, so you're kind of reliant on Blink to get this off in a decent way and to have the enemy not expect it. That's okay so far, but then they're also held in air for quite a while, giving them any way to use any kind of cleanse to get out of that, which gives it a fair bit of a safe zone, so to speak, similar to Xing Qian, who has been considered problematic because of that. After that comes the actual displacement, the actual impactful part. But before that, you can already use abilities. But then again, why would you want to use your stun beforehand unless the target is almost dead already? That doesn't make any sense at all. Or why do you want to use your 2 if you're usually expected to cancel it afterwards to use the 1 anyways, and basically waste half of the ability unless you need exactly that amount of protection shred? The big deal with the ultimate really right now is to throw the enemy to the ground and use your 1. And if you want to do that, you don't want to use either of your other abilities before in most cases, and you can't even use your leap anyways, which would make sense, you know, use your ultimate to get safety in combination with the leap. So you only have this one combo that really makes sense between the ultimate and Paralyzing Spit, but that combo doesn't even feel reliable. Again, I'm not only speaking from my perspective here, but also watching higher ranking players play, and I haven't seen anyone confirm every single Paralyzing Spit after the ultimate, which is how it should be based on what it sounds like. There are enough ways where you just have them sidestep in the slightest way and then you miss one of the projectiles and you don't get the stun off, and it's super frustrating. Apparently, Cerberus is decently valued in the competitive scene at the moment due to his potential to survive the lane relatively safely with very few ways to actually take him down, and the potential threat coming out of his aggression with the 1 if he confirms it. But then again, you have to confirm a lot of 1s to actually have an impact against a target that builds a decent amount of defense. As such, you want to build him with a relatively high amount of sustain, and then you basically sit in your lane, try to survive, and somehow get to late game to have an impact with your ultimates. And that's pretty much about it. Yet strangely enough, for an old bot to some degree at least, his cooldowns are very, very high. 115 on his ultimate that goes down to 95 seconds when other gods start with a 90-second cooldown seems very strange to me, and I think especially that cooldown should be reconsidered. Even though he was supposed to feel like a magical warrior, his shortest cooldown is 15 seconds, and looking at the new release Achilles, he had a 10/now 12 second cooldown ability. Laning as or against a Cerberus solo kinda plays like laning against a Loki solo, or as a Loki solo. It is boring, there is very little actual threat, and when that happens it's kind of the, oh yeah, I didn't expect it and now I died kind of thing, not really a trade that's going on, and that's pretty much about it. It feels dull in my opinion. And the whole kit still, due to the interactions that it have, feel clunky, feel somewhat unpolished, non-synergistic as the heal on his escape for example, and don't really make sense to me. I feel like this character could be a lot more fluid, shorter cooldowns, maybe a little less damage in return, a little bit more reliability on his one, maybe a little bit more towards his ultimate so it doesn't have this many stages that make it a bit weird, and the character could feel a lot more fun to play than he currently does. It's one thing to get a character into viability through buffs to the things that he already has, but another thing to just maybe reconsider some of the things or adjust them in a way that just feels better to play. That is my personal take on Cerberus. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Feel free to leave your opinion on the god in the comments down below. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope to see you all for the next one tomorrow. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and the bell. It really helps me out. DukeSloth, out. So I actually figured out my demonetization issue and it was my outro. As such, feel free to click any of the links around here right now. There will be new outro music as soon as I find something nice. Until then, as you guys requested, I will do the outro music myself. You're welcome.